You are listening to Talk Pretty Real Estate with your host, Beth Pretty. Beth has over 15 years of experience helping people with their real estate needs, and she understands that real estate is more than just selling and listing homes. It's about opening doors and changing lives. And now your host, Beth Pretty.
Hi, and welcome back, listeners. We're super excited that you are joining us for episode 5 on Talk Pretty Real Estate podcast. Today, we are joined for part 2 of our series about how to become a realtor. I know normally what we talk about is preparing your house and buyer and seller needs and wants and things like that. But I thought today we would talk about becoming a realtor or have our little series. So this is part 2, and hopefully you joined us for episode 4, where we learned all about how to go through the process and just, first of all, decide on, do I want to become a realtor, and then go through the process of preparing. Today we're going to talk about where do we land? Once we go through all that, we've got the license, we're ready to go. Where are we going to start out our career, start our business in real estate? And so we are joined again by our amazing guest, Kate Papkin, and I'm so thrilled that you are here with us again. Thank you so much. She's fantastic. General Manager, tell us your title. Go.
Yeah. So thank you for having me back. I love being here. So I am the general manager for 5 different Keller Williams franchise offices. We have locations in Old Town Alexandria, Arlington, Tysons. We're building a new location in South Arlington, and then here in Midlothian, Virginia.
Yeah. So listeners, again, just so you know, we are in the Richmond metro market, but we're going to do our absolute best to talk about things that today that no matter where you live, it will apply to you when you are doing the search to figure out where to put your real estate license. Also want to give a quick shout out to our producer, Michael Resendez.
Thank you.
And I do want to just point out what you're looking at behind us. So this is something that I always ask our guests, where is your favorite place? Where is your happy place? And Kate chose
the Jersey Shore.
You can pick something else if you want.
Not to be confused with the show, the Jersey Shore. I just want to be real clear about that. I would say anywhere there's a beach is my happy place. So the more I thought about this from the last episode, you know, we do purposefully spend a lot of time at the Jersey Shore with my family, my side of family. And yet every year we also go to the Outer Banks with my husband's family. And so both places are equally, I would classify them both as my happy place. Basically, anywhere there's a beach and family and drinks and fun and relaxing, I'm in.
And I'm right in between because I was born and raised in Maryland, and my parents always owned land on the water in Fenwick Island, Delaware. Yeah. So I'm right in between the Jersey Shore and the Outer Banks. So Stick me in the middle. So let's get started. And again, if you want to hear about the process of becoming a realtor, you can tune into episode 4. Today, episode 5, we are going to talk about where do we end up. So we've done all the work, we've done all the preparation. Now it's time to figure out what company to sign on with. Any initial thoughts about that process of how do you get started? How do you figure out? Because there are all these different models out there. So many, there are oodles of brokerages, boutique brokerages, big national franchises. What's out there and how do we get started?
Yes, that's a big question. So initial thoughts are that you have to think about how you intend to run your business, right? So are you looking to build a business such that you're going to grow, and you have a vision of having your own organizational model and people working for you? Are you looking to be more of a salesperson who works for a company that is more, top down and, potentially publicly traded, like running more like a corporation? Or did you get into this to really be an entrepreneur and build your own business and have freedom, flexibility, and resources and tools to be able to do that? In my mind, there's traditional brokerages out there that are run a little bit more like a corporation, and it's more of a feeling that you work for them. And then there's models out there that encourage you as the agent to be the center of the business, and the brokerage is there to support you in hitting your goals and your vision. So two very different mindsets, two different approaches, pros and cons to both. And then there's these like kind of disruptive companies out there, we'll say, or those that are wanting to get into the real estate industry that are taking a very technology forward approach. So this is where you may work for a company and you may get paid simply by the showing, or you may get paid to do increments of the entire process, or you might be a salaried employee. And yet in those settings, you're really not learning the entire process of what it means to represent someone through that entire transaction.
Right.
So there's a lot of different ways you can use your real estate license once you get it. And yet it really depends on like where you see yourself and which lane makes sense.
Yeah. And then I think there's sort of the small boutique type approach where somebody's had some success at a bigger franchise. They go out on their own and create their own brokerage. And they may only have 10 to 20 agents who work with them in their boutique type approach.
Yeah. And that's just usually a hyper local person who knows that market well and builds out a small organization almost as if they're running a team, and they operate that way, and they have presence in just that one local market, or, you know, a couple of them have expanded beyond one market as well.
So one of the things you said that I find interesting, and I notice with a lot of new agents, is that they kind of have the feel that they are working for someone else. And so they just sort of go to different brokerages. Maybe they'll interview and they think they're being interviewed, which they are. But, I would argue that really the agent is doing the majority of the interviewing here. So do you have any guidance on, what are some questions that one might ask when they do go in to interview a brokerage? What are some things?
Yeah. So our brokerage is our brokerages are over 1,000 agents right across these 5 locations. And we're constantly looking for talented people to attract to be in business with in our brokerages. Right. So it is a little bit of an exchange in this interview or this consultation. We call it a business consultation because some people will show up with their resume as if they're going to a traditional job interview.
Exactly.
And I'm like, well, thank you for bringing that. And yet, it is helpful to talk to them about some of their background and some of the attributes that will carry over into them being successful in real estate or not. And yet our belief is sort of everyone has the opportunity to be successful. And obviously I'm biased. And yet I believe that if you're plugged into our models and systems of the offices that I'm responsible for, that you're more likely to be successful. As an agent who comes in new, I think the important things to understand are, how do I get enough experience? Like when agents come in and all they focus on is the money initially and the cost and the expenses and the split, like all different things that are involved.
Okay, so let's talk about split. Can you define that for our listeners?
Yep. So in real estate, there's 2 kinds of expenses, right? One is called a cost of sale, which is something that only comes into play when a sale is done, and that would be a split. So a split is a certain percentage that is allocated back towards your brokerage to pay for the services that they provide you, such as broker support, physical location, leadership team, coaching, consulting, model systems, like all the things that different brokerages do at varying levels. That is their revenue stream for running the brokerage. Okay. Sometimes you go to a model where you only pay them up to a certain amount, like a cap or a maximum, and then you keep the rest as a business owner. And sometimes you're on an ongoing, never-ending split. It just depends on how it's set up and what you get. So a cost of sale, obviously you only pay a split when you close a deal.
Right.
However, there are expenses involved as well, like keeping up with your annual real estate association dues that are due annually. Most brokerages are charging some kind of insurance, some error and omissions insurance. And so these are things that you're paying for no matter what, if you close a transaction or not, because you need them in place to be functional as an agent.
Yes.
So sometimes people come in and new to the business, they just want to know about the money, Okay. Like, how do I, like, what is it going to cost me to get here or to be here? I honestly believe that that's the wrong mentality when you're getting started. So the mentality that I appreciate more and have seen more success with is someone saying, how am I going to get the coaching and the training and get as many at-bats in a brokerage as possible so I can learn, build, learn from my mistakes, and grow to do as many transactions as I can, and therefore net as much money as I possibly can.
Right.
So the finances have to be competitive and they have to make sense. And yet leading with that is not always, I mean, because you could get 100% of something, go to like one of these brokerages where you're paying like a flat fee as an agent, but 100% of nothing is nothing, right? So if you never get into business, it doesn't matter, right? So go somewhere where you're going to have the environment to succeed, where there's people that you can look up to and learn from, where there's open houses that you can hold for other agents, where you can be part of masterminding, collaborating team meetings, where they have attorneys on hand or real, partners, all the things.
Yeah, so let me just unpack a couple things there. So you mentioned the flat fee brokerage, and just for our newbie listeners, newbie to real estate, that's where you just pay a flat fee. It could be $500, it could be $800, it could be $499, $399 for each transaction. They don't typically have a big office space for you to come to. They don't typically provide a lot of training, which for me as a new agent was very important. That was really at the top of my list. So there's that type of brokerage, the flat fee brokerage. You mentioned models where it's all virtual, right? So no brick and mortar, nobody per se in person that you can mastermind with. And there's, for me personally, again, I look for places I can mastermind. But if that's a good fit for you, that kind of virtual experience, you don't want to have to mastermind, or you don't want to have an office to go into, then that might be a good fit for you. And then you have traditional brokerages that you pay a percentage of the transaction back to the brokerage. They get paid first and then you. And that's ongoing, that you have a split or percentage that you're paying. And then there are the other kind where you have the cap, where you, again, pay a percentage of your commission back to the brokerage, but it caps out. There's a threshold. When you reach that threshold, you might be 100% commission after that. So there's that structure, right?
Yeah, I tend to think about it in 3 buckets, right?
Okay.
So one is what we classify as the dependent models. So these are models where the real estate agent is highly dependent on the brokerage. They get certain, they get certain value from the brokerage, and they pay that brokerage a split on every single transaction that they do, no matter what. Okay.
Right. Yep.
Then there's the independent model, which is basically the agent pays the brokerage the least amount of money possible. It could be flat fee or it could be monthly fixed rate, but they don't get anything. The agent is running incredibly independent, right? On their own. They're making it happen on their own. Then there's the middle, the interdependent, and that's kind of where like my experience more lies, in that you charge a very fair, competitive package, or split with the brokerage, me as the brokerage, right, as the brokerage leader, but you get an unlimited amount of resources that you can choose to plug into. So there's all 3 paths work for different people, but to me,
And in different stages of the business, right?
A new agent is going to be looking for different things than maybe an experienced agent who can be a little bit more independent potentially. And so, you also want to understand, like, what is the policy for the brokerage on doing your own personal deals? Like if you're an investor or you're looking to service family or yourself, you want to understand, like, how much autonomy do I have to be out there negotiating my own terms with my clients? You want to understand, what are the expectations of me as an independent contractor here? What do you require, or what do you suggest? I always recommend people to ask to speak to a couple people within the brokerage and get the true agent perspective at varying levels of where you want to go. If you are looking to be part of a real estate team within a brokerage, you might want to talk to multiple team leads to understand the value of being part of that team and what you get for that. I actually have a list of 52 questions that you should ask your brokerage when interviewing. I don't have it here with me right now.
Pick your top three. So, I'm just going to interject for a second. What I did, and because my background is in education, I created a chart. And
of course you did.
Yes, a little chart. And for each category, I had a points that I attributed to that because of how valuable it was to me. And having a background in education, training was very important to me. And having brokerage support, because I was new. I didn't know what I was doing. So that was important to me. The other thing that was really important to me is customer service.
Yes.
And so I not only went in to the brokerages to, of course, interview, but I also called, and I attributed points based on how the receptionist answered and handled me when I came in the door. And if they did a crappy job, because that is the face of the brokerage, that person is the one who's going to potentially interact with your clients. That at that time was important to me. So if they did me wrong, they got a low score for that. So that was something that was important to me. And then also, what are they going to give me? And the other thing we haven't really talked about is the monthly fee.
Yeah.
So I was looking at the monthly fee that the brokerage was charging me versus what I was getting for it. So let's talk about the monthly fee for a second.
Yeah. So typically a brokerage will charge either monthly or quarterly, depending on how they do their books. And that usually covers the ongoing expenses that they have to pay to have you as an agent in their brokerage. So things like insurance, things like technology tools. So a lot of companies now are using CRMs or customer relation management systems in order to help their agents stay organized and be technology forward. And so there are fees that get associated with that. And so each agent kind of pays like a small portion just for the use in their business of those tools. And so you do have to understand like what is the frequency of that cost of that's a true expense, right? Because you're paying that no matter if you're doing a transaction or not.
Right. And
And yet what are you getting for that? And are you actually using it? The other things that I think about on that list of questions is, what is the reputation of the brand and what is the reach of the brand? So some companies are all over the world. They're international like ours. Some are local like we talked about earlier. And what opportunities does that represent? Like, do you want to be able to tell a client, I can literally help you anywhere in the world with your real estate needs because I have trusted partners in every area that you would possibly consider? Another one is really important right now is that a lot of these brokerages have not successfully navigated a down market. A lot of these newer companies that have gotten into the business in the past couple years don't have any precedent over how to navigate when transactions are down 30% year over year and there's less agents in the business and there's less transactions to be had. And that's what's happening right now. And it's probably going to keep happening for the next 2 years.
so I'm super glad you brought that up because I got in the market. I became a realtor in 2008, which if
Great timing.
Right. If you didn't know, that was sort of a crash moment. And when I got in the market, there were 7,200 realtors in the Richmond MLS, multiple listing service. That's how many realtors were in my local market. When 2014 came along and things were improving and the market was improving, that number had dwindled to 4,800. And a lot of those little boutiques went bye-bye. We've had an incredible market the last 2 years. Here in Richmond, again, I looked at the agent count, and it was over 8,000 realtors back this summer. So summer of 2022, there were over 8,000 agents. I pulled the number this morning, and we're at 7,450. So already 600 agents just in the Richmond market have dropped out. So we're going to see some of these brokerages that have popped up since the market's been good. They're going to struggle a little bit. So yeah. This is one where you can see how like we've been on an even or an up market for I think
7 or 8 years now. So we're due. It is a cyclical business, and we're here now. And so you can see where someone who had massive success might have decided to go off and start their own independent brokerage. Well, when you don't have the backing of a regional, national, or bigger platform, it could become trickier on how to navigate your expenses and attract and retain talent in order to succeed through a downshift. Yes. So I think as an agent, it's important to understand, like, does the company that I'm talking to or in business with, like, have they done this before? What was the outcome? And do they have people in leadership of the company that actually walked the walk? There's a lot of companies now getting into real estate just simply for the money, and they're profit first companies, and they're typically publicly traded. And, that's different. Are you people first or are you profit first? And that's another, are we good?
Yeah,
I thought that was like dramatic music for what I just said. I was like, wow.
It's my 2-year-old.
Bum, bum, bum.
I was like, mic drop moment there. Anyway, so yeah, all those things matter. I think having some kind of technology offering where you can be more efficient as an agent, because people expect a more immediate response. They expect automated communication, and you as an agent have to keep yourself organized if you're going to build a big business. So, all of those things, and other opportunities. A lot of brokerages will offer additional either investment opportunities or auxiliary opportunities that complement the main core business of being a real estate agent and having production. But sometimes you can invest in other things that the company's involved in or the company itself. And so those are all things that I would look for to understand the big picture. But when you're brand new, to me, it's about the coaching, the training, the environment, the track record, the brand, and the reach of the brokerage.
Yeah, so here are some specific questions I think you would need to ask, especially centered around these monthly fees that brokerages charge. So, for example, me and my first brokerage, they charged $89 a month. Okay. This was in 2008.
Wow. Okay.
$89 a month. They provided no website. No marketing. And that did not include the E&O, errors and omission insurance, that you are required to have if you are licensed. So, and we had to pay into a $25 flower fee in case flowers needed to be
Who's
getting
the flowers?
I had a death in my family, and I had foot surgery, and I never got flowers. So I don't know who was getting my $25 flower fee.
That's not good.
And we had to pay extra if we wanted to do relocation business. We had to pay into that fund. So there were all these extra things that I didn't know about, and I didn't know to ask. So, you want to ask about the monthly fee. What does it cover? Ask how errors and omission insurance is paid for you. Those are definitely things you want to ask. And of course, you want to ask about splits and all of that. And you want to ask about training. So training was so important to me. And I was told in my interviews, oh, yes, we provide training. We do this, we do that. And then when I got there,
Nothing.
The training consisted of the broker who would sit around a small table with the newbies and every Tuesday for like 45 minutes. And he would say, do you have any questions? So that was our training.
Yeah, that's another really good point. Another thing I would look for is, does the brokerage you're going to have set systems and models that they're teaching that could be successful and scalable in any market across any person? When you get trained in that way by one specific person, it often is, well, this is how I did it.
Right.
This is how I built what I built. And that may or may not work for you, right? If you're full-time or dual career, or you like to lead generate or prospect in this way and they did this way. So I think having a company that has proven data and statistics around, like, for example, one of the models we teach a lot is that you should be able to predict a 10% return on your database as long as you communicate with it systematically X amount of times a year. And that's usually 36 times or more. So if I have 200 people that I'm communicating with 36 times or more throughout the year as an agent business owner, I should be able to predict that I'm going to do 20 units. So what does that actually look like? And that's based off of national and worldwide data that's been studied over the course of many, many years. So that's a little bit of different of a conversation, an action, and a predictable outcome than someone sitting around a table and saying, like, what else do you want to know? And oftentimes as a newer, or even as you go to another level within your business as an experienced agent, you don't know what you don't know. So you don't know what to ask. So again, like, I'm a big models and I'm a very big predictability person, and I like to be really smart with my time because time is everything. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, how do I be as successful as possible in the least amount of time? Like, show me the path. And so that's what I would look for.
Well, the other part of that with the training is some companies charge for it.
Right.
And some companies don't. I think, so you want to clarify that. I think you also want to ask, do you have opportunities to interact with the top salespeople in the brokerage? Because the company I started with, if the top salespeople ever showed up at anything, and this is a true story, one of them came up to me. I said, "Hi, I'm new. I'm so excited to meet you." And she said, "If you want to learn from me, I will send you a fee structure of what my time is worth, and
Wow.
you'll need to pay me for my time." Your broker is somebody who hasn't sold anything in years, or they have a very scaled down business because they're busy running the
office.
brokerage.
Yeah.
So I want to know, and I would highly recommend for new agents to ask the question, will I have opportunities to interact with the really successful top salespeople and learn from them in this brokerage? I think that's important.
Yeah, I think the other thing to think about is does the brokerage have any inherent benefit to help each other succeed, right? Because in this business, every agent is an individual business, an individual contractor, 1099 contractor. So in theory, we're all in competition with each other, right? So some brokerages, that shows up right away.
It does.
And it's very obvious, and it's how the culture is built. In other models that may have like a profit share system, for example, there is some financial benefit or gain in everyone being successful, because the more profitability that the organization achieves, the more that they're able to then share back with their agent partners. So that's how we do it, to kind of ensure that culture, to make sure that we don't have that kind of like, well, if you want my time, it's worth X, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, no, we're all kind of in this together, even though we run our own businesses, and I have a vested interest in your success. So yeah, let's go grab coffee and let me tell you about how I did X, Y, Z. Right. So what kind of culture are you walking into, and understanding, how you feel about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. I mean, I have scaled my business and built my business because of what I stole essentially from other agents who were kind enough in my current brokerage to share with me.
Yeah, we call it R&D. Yes.
Yeah.
Rip off and duplicate.
Yep. Rip off and duplicate. R&D. So
Is that the name of the podcast?
Now that's an idea. Yes. That's going to be my podcast that I start.
That's a great idea for a podcast. So we've talked about a little bit about training. We've talked about fees. Let's talk about marketing and what different brokerages may or may not provide with marketing, because that's really how you're going to, get your business going, is marketing your brand and your business. So,
yeah. So, some brokerages are very brokerage forward in their marketing, right? So it's basically like name of brokerage and big, bold letters.
Yeah. So that was the first place I started. Yep. We were given some free postcards, but my name was in a little corner on the back of the postcard. Right. The rest of the postcard was the brokerage and their contact information, not mine.
Yep. And that's because they're using that to drive business back into the brokerage that they're then typically giving back to agents and charging them more money for.
Yeah, because if they gave me a lead, I owed them a referral fee.
Exactly. So that's
60-40, by the way.
That's one way to do it. And in that model, or those models, they're typically the more dependent models, and they will they'll offer you some free marketing included because you're marketing their brand, right? Mm-hmm. You're the conduit to do that. There's other models where they actually want and encourage the agent brand to be more forward, and they're, it's a little bit, it's the opposite, whereas the brokerage is actually at the bottom of the postcard for legal reasons, but it's saying powered by X or in affiliation with X. And that's more of the entrepreneurial concept, where the agent's building their business, they're out there brand forward, and they're backed by a brokerage for legal reasons, for systems models, for everything that they get to run their business. In those models, oftentimes what we're finding is as time goes on, there is an expectation of agents to have marketing included from the brokerage to some level. So, for example, like we have in our CRM, there's over like 7,000 automated, postcards, flyers, posts, like holiday posts, Mother's Day, Father's Day.
Like turn your clocks
Yeah,
back
turn your clocks back.
weekend.
Yeah. So there's so many things in there that you can just basically take down, download, send out digitally, electronically, whatever, or, paper, you know what I mean? Direct mail. And so I think every brokerage nowadays has some kind of marketing included, right? Or being offered as part of their package, but it's still up to the agent to figure out how much of that do you want to use and how much of that might you want to go create and customize completely on your own. And does your brokerage allow you to do that? Some of them do, some of them don't. But some people do what we call farming, right? Which is where you specifically concentrate on one specific neighborhood or one specific demographic of people. Like if you want to become the go-to agent for your soccer league, right? You could become, so you might invest marketing that is very purposeful around being known as that person.
So I'm sorry. I thought you were going to pause there for a second. I know a realtor recently that it was only been in a year, and he door dashed and left his business card on and he actually got a couple of listings from door dashing.
So he like door dashed
Interesting.
On the side.
Okay.
And then,
But
so
he would include his business
card on all the places he went to in that first year and something like that, and actually got, a couple listings from that.
What I love about that is like, if you're going to spend time doing something, you might as well maximize it, right?
Yeah,
so that's great.
Ingenious.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah.
ABH, always be hustling. ABC, always be closing.
That's right.
Love it.
That's right.
The other thing I was going to say is just like, we have a lot of agents who partner with charities on an ongoing basis, right? Yep. So you may, as an agent, business owner, develop a marketing plan around that charity specifically, and that might be something that you choose to do above and beyond on your own. So every brokerage should have some marketing resources, whether it's templated, sometimes it can be custom. Sometimes there's brokerage pieces that are put out that agents decide to co-brand and make it their own, or at least make it look like it's coming from them, even though it's really coming from the brokerage. That's part of the value that we like to provide. So you definitely want to understand the depth of the marketing and then your ability to get custom and creative outside of that if you choose to.
Yeah, that's great. So we know about fees and fee structures. We know about marketing. We know about technology, tools, and training. So those are all big pieces to the whole figuring out which brokerage to end up with. You mentioned your list of 52 questions to ask. Wowza.
Yes.
I now feel like I did not do a good job when I did my search, because I probably only had 13 to 15 questions. So help us step up our game. Can you remember, like, what are your top three or four questions on that list?
Oh gosh. A lot of it we covered in just general conversation, but I would say, obviously the expense structure is a big one. So you always want to understand that. That's top of the list. Third party testimonials or conversations, like always ask to speak to somebody else who's really in the business, who you can get a real honest agent to agent review from. And I think just the general expectations of what does the brokerage expect of you, and do they have examples of people who have achieved what you want to achieve, right? So you're not going to go to like a small boutique local brokerage with 10 people if your plan is to build a scalable business that goes across multiple states, right? Like that to me is like a huge disconnect, but that's not for everybody. If you want to scale across multiple states, you want to go with a national brand that has a platform and an actual plan to do that. So I think understanding what your goal is in year 1, year 3, and year 5, which is sometimes hard for people, but if you can stretch your thinking to think like, where do I really want this to go? And then get to the place where it supports your year 5 goal. Okay. We can achieve a whole lot more in 5 years than we ever think we can. And so getting to that place first and pushing yourself in that environment is what I would recommend.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I would also want to know how accessible the broker is to me when I have technical questions or needs. Is there somebody, because I've done over 700 transactions, and every transaction something new comes up. There's no such thing as a slam dunk easy transaction. There's always something new that comes up. And so you want to know that you have that person, that go-to person that you can actually talk to help you when you have a technical, legal, or real estate question to help you with your transaction. So I think that's important to ask too.
Yes, 100%. I would say understanding the tenure and the validity and the relevancy of the leadership, whether it's like the brokers, some models have other positions kind of running the offices, just kind of doing a lot of the agent support, coaching, consulting, helping agents increase their business. So understanding who those people are, what valid experience they have in the industry or in other industries building businesses is absolutely critical.
So what we haven't talked about is culture at a brokerage. Yeah. So, again, you have to know yourself and what you're looking for and what is your jam? What gets you up in the morning? Because you need something to get you up in the morning or you're not going to be in this business for very long. So, what is it that you need to motivate you, to keep you going? What type of culture do you need? Do you need an office space to walk into? Do you want to get to know the other agents? Do you want to have fun social activities? And one of the things I love about my brokerage is all the opportunities to learn about how to prepare for retirement. I mean, I think, that's one of the things about realtors that I'm very passionate about is that most realtors have no exit plan.
Right.
They don't know how they're going to retire. They don't put anything away. They don't build anything. They don't invest. And so, that's another thing that I went looking for is, does this brokerage provide training opportunities or the culture to help support wealth building? Because I do want to retire. I do want to walk away from this at some point, but not have to give up everything I've worked so hard to build. So talk a little bit about culture. And
yeah, so I think when people hear culture, they think about having a chili cook-off and all that, that's part of it.
That
right?
is part of it.
That's part of it. Is building a community within a brokerage where you can engage and do fun things or happy hours or social outings. The other one is having a culture of productivity, right? Is being part of a brokerage that stands for professionalism, that stands for, we're going to outperform the market. We're going to always be striving to do our best and succeed. Another piece of culture is philanthropy. So a lot of our brokerages focus highly on being involved in the community. And there's a couple times throughout the year that we gather together and agents extend the opportunity to get involved to their own databases. And then we're able to make this amazing ripple effect in the community. So that's important. And the other one is kind of just the tonality and the approachability of the leadership, right? I mean, that matters. Even in a franchise type of model where you have the same brand name, your experience walking into any given office, even the 5 that I lead, they all have different personalities.
Yeah, definitely.
So showing up, I spend every day at a different office every week, which I love. And showing up is just different every day because I'm oh, this office has this kind of personality, right? And so I think making sure that you trust and you really jive with what those people stand for, and that, if you want to be pushed, then you want to be somewhere where they're going to hold you accountable because you're wanting that. If you want to be part of the chili cook-off team, then you want to be involved in that, right? And what's cool about a lot of brokerages is there's a lot of opportunities for you to get involved. We started building out these kind of micro communities, and this is something on our growth plan for next year, is to build these sort of sub communities within the brokerages, because it's getting so big that we're realizing like some people have really a high interest in luxury homes. Some people have high interest in serving military families.
Yes.
Some people, one of the ones I'm passionate about is like, how do you be a mega mom? Like, how do you run a big ass business and still have, you know, balance in your life, and you're still there for the important moments for your kids, and how do you show up in all areas of life? So we're building out these sort of micro communities so that you can get involved if you choose to, but it's there for you. And I think sometimes when real estate can be really hard, and there's some days like you question, like, what am I doing? And so I think getting involved with people who share interests with you helps lift your spirits up and help you understand that real estate can touch so many different parts of our life. And, you know, it just depends on how involved you want to be.
Yeah, I agree with all that. That's excellent. I think culture is very important. And I find that a lot of the agents who are the most successful are the ones that, what's the right word? You plug in, I guess is the best way. So you've plugged into your brokerage and their culture. And the agents who just sort of are their little island out here and not doing that, they tend to struggle a little bit more. So, you know, you got to know yourself and what it is you need. So we've talked about culture, we've talked about fee structure, tools, technology, training, support, brokerage leadership support. Is there anything we've missed to help prepare a newbie to figure out where they want to end up?
I think you just have to have a brokerage that will take the time to personalize the plan for you, right? So even though I believe that people who plug in are more successful, and we have data around that, I also have some agents that are like, I'm never coming to the chili cook-off. I'm never doing this. Please don't call me and ask me to go to this specific thing, because I'm not going to do it. And so as leadership, we have to adapt too, right? Like we have to understand, like, this person literally just wants to run their business and go to their kids' baseball tournaments. Like, that's all he wants. So, and he will call if there's an issue, and his expectation is that we pick up that phone, and we will, right? And we will resolve the issue with him, and we'll be there for him. We'll have his back. And yet we know, like, he's not into that other stuff, which is totally fine.
Right.
So having a culture in a company where you can adapt and be fluid and have multiple ways that people can engage to their comfort level, I think is also important.
Yeah, that's valid. Definitely valid. Well, why don't you give a quick plug for your brokerage?
Sure.
You're allowed to do that.
I'd be happy to. Yeah. So we are KW Metro Center. So like I said, we have offices in 5 different locations. We have 1,024 agents as of today. We have serviced 4,300, slightly over 4,300 families last year for almost $3 billion in closed sales volume. So all that aside, I mean, what I love most is, like, we've got a great group of people who continuously press and push to improve the professionalism of our industry, which is really important to me. And we're always looking for great people to be in business with. So if you want that list of 52 questions, I'm sure I can get that to you. Or you can feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to help you navigate your real estate decisions at any level. I mean, that's what I do. That's what I'm passionate about.
Yeah. So if you're the Pretty Properties, which is my business, I am aligned also with KW Metro Center. They recently purchased our brokerage, and we couldn't be happier. We're having a great time with them. So if Keller Williams is something you're interested in, please feel free to reach out to me, 804-922-6243, or you can reach out to Kate as well, and we can have some of her information in our show notes. If there's another brokerage, the best way to find out about brokerages is ask people you know who are already with those brokerages. Do know that they might have some other things that might motivate them motivators to get you to their brokerage. So they might paint a pretty rosy picture. So you've got to do your own research. But that's a great start, is to talk to somebody you know who's already with a brokerage and get their opinions. They probably interviewed. So ask them, where did you interview? Why didn't you go with that company? Why did you choose this company? And would you do anything differently? I think these are great questions to ask. Kate, I want to thank you again. And if you could just share, we're going to revisit our questions. Can you share with us your favorite podcast?
Yes, absolutely. So right now I'm really into a podcast called Empire Builders, which is a group of women leading big businesses, big lives, and also Bigger Pockets, which is known as an investing focused podcast. I was recently a guest on one called Service Above Self, and I really enjoyed being a guest on that podcast. And so that episode will come out soon, so that's exciting, and I've really kind of gotten into that, and I can't wait to be listening to all of yours.
Thank you.
So yeah.
And what's your favorite business or real estate book that you would recommend?
Yep. So on the last episode, I recommended The One Thing because it's a life book that teaches you how to use your business to build out your perfect life. In addition to that, I would have to say that our whole company is built on the fundamentals of what we call the Millionaire real estate agent. It's called the Red Book because it's a big red book that you can get anywhere. And it basically boils down 4 different models of how you build a successful real estate business. So I coach and consult to that a lot. So I would say that's another great one.
Yeah, no matter where you end up, and there are agents at all different companies, they all learn quite a bit from the Millionaire real estate book. I have 3 copies of it, all bent up from me reading it over and over again. That's a great book. You should go out and buy that for sure. If you interview with Keller Williams office, one of our offices, they'll give you one for free. But that's a great book to get started with. I wanted to thank you so much for coming on. And I have a little book to give you called The Future of Happiness by Amy Blankson. This is a fabulous book about positivity and happiness, especially as it relates to technology and social media. So I hope you enjoy that one. Thank you for coming. And
thanks for having me here.
Being brave to come on our podcast. And again, please subscribe if you're a fan of Talk Pretty Real Estate Podcast. And please leave us a review. We would love a 5-star review. And thanks again to our producer, Michael Resendez, for a great job. And we look forward to seeing you soon for our next episode. Take care.
You've just been listening to Talk Pretty with host Beth Pretty. If you have questions or would like to suggest a topic for an upcoming episode, reach out to Beth on Instagram or Facebook at Pretty Properties VA. For more information about Beth and her team, visit prettypropertiesva.com. The Talk Pretty Real Estate Podcast is a production of Studio 77. Visit rvastudio77.com for more information.